This is going to be a difficult video for me to share and articulate, and I can't do the subject justice, but I'll give it a try. I need to put this out in the universe and release this. Um, Last video that I published on YouTube and social media was I mentioned how I was teaching abnormal psychology, psychopathology to undergraduates at the University of Colorado, and I was working with an adjunct faculty member who was terrible. She was absolutely terrible, and she spewed a lot of lies, and I was unafraid to correct her when she would teach the students, tell the students things that I knew were bullshit. Right, but she's part of this satanic new world order pushing the bullshit agenda and the narrative. She did not like me for correcting her, especially in front of the students. Um, she knew that the entire mental health narrative not only is bullshit, but it's all fabricated. Interestingly, this was in 2008 or 9 when I was teaching with her. And in the final exam, there was a case study for the students, and they had to do a diagnosis. And in this case study, it was the Virginia Tech shooter, some Asian name, I forget his name, who I believe shot and murdered 32 people and injured a lot more, like 17 more. He was one of the big mass shooters. And the diagnosis that she was aiming for was paranoid schizophrenia. Now, this man, he had a history of depression and selective mutism, and selective mutism isn't due to a physical inability to speak, but it's psychological from intense trauma and invalidation. It's basically like an extreme form of social anxiety disorder where you get so much anxiety from just speaking. That's through a lifetime of invalidation and abuse and neglect that leads to selective mutism. So this person was likely a targeted individual from birth, and was likely the recipient of Voice of God, Voice V2K technology, and was likely severely abused. He did not have a traditional case of schizophrenia, but that was the diagnosis she was gunning for. And so many of these mass shooters, the media and the narrative love to blame mental illness rather than what's really going on is this intentional infections and directed energy weapons, Havana syndrome weapon attacks, and voices being through radio frequencies being shot into the person's brain, telling them what to do and telling them negative thoughts and belittling them and abusing them. And then there's the social isolation of the gang stalking and all the career and personal sabotage and all these other things. So it wasn't paranoid schizophrenia that led to this mass shooting. It was abuse by the deep state, by the satanic deep state, where they frame it as mental illness. But this case study of this Virginia Tech shooter was in the final exam that she put in the final exam. Now, as I'm reflecting and how upset she was with me for correcting her consistently for the bullshit shit that she would propagate in class, she, in her satanic ways, was projecting my future, my intended future. The intent was to through MK Ultra Monarch program to make me a Manchurian candidate, right? One of these school shooters to act out violently and blame it on a long history of mental illness. I've been through so much sabotage and abuse, covert, that no person can understand. Only God and Jesus can truly understand that, what I've been through. And I'm not saying this for sympathy or anything. I'm just trying to articulate things that everything isn't quite as it seems and face validity. And you certainly can't believe the government's narratives and the media's narratives on anything. And certainly not the mass shooters. Alex Jones was right on a lot of things when it comes to those mass shooters, that a lot of this is theater and a lot of it is staged. But he's missing the covert torture that all of these mass shooters have gone through, from James Holmes to the Columbine shooter to this Virginia Tech shooter to the guy in Tucson who uh, shot Gabby Giffords, a former congresswoman in Tucson, Arizona, and a bunch of other people at a grocery store, Safeway, I believe, on Oracle Road. I've been subjected to this voice of God V2K technology, where they've been projecting voices in my head since at least 1993. Fortunately, God gave me the strength to block out these voices. And so this person who was projecting my future as a mass shooter failed. Well, the abuse of me was very successful, but they couldn't program me with these voices, right, to get me to do what they want, their bidding. But they definitely wanted me to act out. It put me through such extreme abuse that I would have to act out irrationally and violently some sort of way. Over 2 years ago, or 2 years, it's 2024, in March of 2024, I was ready to set myself on fire outside of Pfizer Pharmaceuticals after I posted my epic YouTube rant that the medical system doesn't care about you. I was going to do that in a form of protest because I couldn't live another day. I was under so much abuse, and I couldn't escape it, and I didn't know how I could live another minute. So, but God told me, my angels told me that wasn't my. As I was, after I published that YouTube, and then I drove past Pfizer. I drove to Pfizer with the intention of setting myself on fire. God told me that they would frame it as me being mentally ill and unstable and unhinged, and it wouldn't have the intended outcome that I wanted, and that was to wake people up. But I didn't know how I could keep going, but the angels told me to keep on driving and keep going, and here I am today. My parents have been, my biological mother and the man who claims to be my biological father have been my primary abusers throughout my life. They sold me into government torture programs, likely before I was even born. Definitely from birth, but likely when I was just a fetus. And from after I did that, released that video in the Chicago area in 2004, March of 2024, I ended up having my hand forced, and I had to go to Tucson, Arizona, to my parents, where I was forced basically into a week-long psychiatric stay. That was complete bullshit. But I had to play the game, right? I had to play the game. Otherwise, my parents would have done everything to strip me of my rights and would have forced me into inpatient psychiatric evaluation. So I had to willingly admit myself. That's pretty fucked up. I received no healing inside this inpatient stay. Anyways, I've created other videos on that. That's not my point. my point is that once I was released, and my parents having 50 years of severe abuse and neglect of me, they ramped everything up. And when I came out of that psych facility, I stayed with my parents for a month or two. And now the goal of the puppet masters, and my parents are New World Order, deep state occultists, right? Who have been trying to sacrifice me so that they can raise the ranks in the ranks of this satanic evil groups. Right? There's something about the oldest born son and sacrificing the oldest born son. So they ramped up their abuse of me. One night I was sleeping, trying to sleep, and I had worms crawling up my nostrils and in my mouth, and violently. And my parents were sleeping in their bedroom, and this was in their library. They just had a small place. They're in Tucson. And I took my sheets that were covered in parasites, and I opened up their bedroom and threw them in there. Everything indicates to me that the goal of the puppet masters, the people pulling the strings here in these Monarch programming and these covert torture programs, was for me to murder my parents. It's only by the strength of God and everything else that I have not acted out in these violent manners, despite all these handlers and all this abuse and torture that is invisible to the general person, to anybody. The only, again, the only being that knows exactly what I've been through is the Most High and Jesus Christ. I just want to put this out there that these mass shooters have gone through severe abuse, and it's really tragic, really tragic. So, anyway, have a great day.